hey, you get a weekly check-in with me. So it is your responsibility to check in and tell me what's going on. And that's it. You're not really describing, number one, the utility behind those check-ins. So if you instead were to say, when you check in with me every week, it's so important because this is how I can know what I need to do to coach you best.
All right, let's dive in. The real reason, and this is so topical right now for me, well, not for me personally, the real reason clients ghost you. I had this happen with a staff member. Hello, where are you?
Oh my gosh.
Well, let's talk about that. Friction, identity conflict, coach blind spots. What's up with that? Because you post about this a lot. Guys, if your client is ghosting you, you've got to fix that. It's a fixable problem.
It is. And so many people think it's not, or so many people, coaches, right? It just becomes, okay, well, this person doesn't want it bad enough, or they go internally and just think, well, I'm doing something wrong, but I don't know what to do differently. And then we just continue to pester the client every single week, like just checking in on your check-in.
Yes.
What's going on? Like, hey, I'm still here. And just so you know, but it doesn't feel good as a coach because that is literally the main thing, the main way you are contacting your clients every week is to have those weekly check-ins. And of course, you can't actually deliver results if that person's not checking in with you. So what do we do? What's the real reason? And like that, the question that you're asking of it, what is the real reason why your clients ghost you is the question we should be asking very first and foremost. Before, I know everyone wants the tips and tricks and strategies and hacks and how do I get my client to do this stuff? But the reality is we need to better understand why they're not checking in the first place. And yes, it's hard to know when they're not talking to you. If you're not hearing from them, you might be thinking like, yeah, Kasey, like sounds great, but I can't get them to respond to me. So how am I supposed to figure this out? And I think the first thing that is an easy assessment in a way is to think about what would make someone do something or not do something. And I like to think of it as really as humans, we're such complex creatures, but it can be this simple that we either do things to solve a problem or eliminate discomfort. So if we're thinking about your clients, why would they not be checking in with you if we're looking at these two potential routes? Solve a problem, eliminate discomfort. So if they've been a client who's been not very consistent, really struggling to stick to the plan, it probably doesn't feel very comfortable to check in with you and to tell you all of the things that they are quote unquote doing wrong. So the best way to eliminate that discomfort, just don't check in with you. They don't want to bother you with their problems and that they're not doing anything. I think a lot of coaches too end up creating this relationship that they are this authority figure that needs to be, it becomes this like representation of, as the client, I want to do right by my coach, even more so than I want to do things for myself. And people get stuck in that trap too, where it's, I'm not checking in because I'm going to disappoint this person, when the reality is like checking in is how you actually get help, right? So is it eliminating discomfort? Is it solving a problem? What problem could we be solving here by not checking in as the client, right? And it might be, okay, well, I can't figure this out, and she's already told me what to do as the coach. So why would I check in? The problem that needs to be solved is that I need to stick to the plan. I need to do things. I already know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not doing it, so I'm not going to check in. The problem needs to be solved over here, not with my coach, right? And what this can really do is just shed more light on what might be going on the other side of the computer screen or whatever, especially if you're a remote coach, right? And to really better understand where our clients are coming from. Of course, we don't want to make assumptions, but there's a lot of different ways you could be then reaching out to that person and maybe talking about some of the stuff that I just talked about that might make them feel more invited back in to start checking in with you, or at least just start a conversation with them.
Okay. So then what? What do you do? Right? Because they're not talking to you. And can you nip it in the bud faster? I'm sure you got a way to like pattern recognition, like, okay, we can see where this is going. Let's pivot here. Spill the beans.
Yeah, absolutely. You're like, tell me. I really like that you asked that too.
Clients, right? Because your clients get a chance to peek behind the veil. What's going on? Because if you can have the two sides collaborating, right? understand yourself, understand the patterns, what you're going through. One of the things I say to when I start cohorts, big 6-month cohort, I'm like, listen, guys, red flag. If you ever once tell yourself, oh, I don't want to pester Michelle, or she's too busy, or I don't want to be a complainer, that is a red flag, a huge red flag. What I say is like, listen, you're paying me big bucks, right? Get your piece of the pie.
Yeah, I like that.
You deserve this, and I'm here to help. I love it. But it's a red flag because, and I say, some of you are going to go down that road. So there's one person in this room that will do that. Let's flag that now, so that at least we can come back to it. And I can at least say, do you remember when you're doing that thing?
Yes. Yeah. And that is perfect positioning for everything that I wanted to say, because a lot of the time it is, and I know coaches don't want to hear this, because if they have clients who are currently not checking in with them, they're like, cool, thanks for telling me the things I should have done at the beginning that I didn't do. But what you are speaking to is really expectation setting. And that's something I talk to my students a lot about, students being coaches. And we talk about, how are you actually presenting information about the client check-ins at the beginning? Is it, hey, you get a weekly check-in with me, so it is your responsibility to check in and tell me what's going on, and that's it? You're not really describing, number one, the utility behind those check-ins. So if you instead were to say, when you check in with me every week, it's so important because this is how I can know what I need to do to coach you best. Even on the really off weeks, or where you feel like nothing went to plan, that is such important information for me to hear. So you may not think it's something I want to hear. That's the stuff I really want to hear. I almost would rather hear that on those bad weeks than when you're having a perfect week, right? So like really explaining to them how important it is, because so often the reason people don't do something is because they don't see the utility behind it. They don't see the value behind it. So if we can make sure we're doing that at the start, and honestly, that can also happen at any point in the coaching relationship. And in addition to that, also just setting the expectation of what the relationship looks like. I no longer have a coaching company anymore, but I did for many, many, many years. And we had an expectation setting agreement in our intake form for new clients. So it was literally like half a page of phrase after phrase talking about how, hey, shit's going to hit the fan at some point and it's not going to go well. Can I still expect you to communicate with me during those weeks? And we would have them literally initial next to each one of these phrases so that they're reading through them and saying, yes, I agree to it. And then during their onboarding call, the coach would also have a conversation with them. Hey, I know you filled out the expectation agreement, but I want to hammer home how important this is. So that alone can change the game. And like what you were saying too, is like we can then refer back to what we talked about before. You can bring clients back to that expectation agreement and back to that original conversation and remind them.
Because beginning, when they have so much emotional investment, they're excited, they're all in. They're like, no, I'm never going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like humor. I talked about my mom a lot. Look, my mom, she's one of the toughest clients, but we didn't give up and we kept trying. It's not about perfect, but all that stuff, right? So that's huge. They're there for a reason. And you tell yourself short as a coach. So I like that. So setting expectations at the beginning. And then what do you mean along the way? Is there something specific you're talking about like a recommitment phase, or is it more noticing something's happening?
Yeah, I think honestly, both. So when I say along the way, like that is something, if you're listening to this and you're a coach and you're in this situation, you're like, okay, great. I'm going to start adding that in with my new clients, but I got current clients that this is an issue. What do I do? This can still be brought up. And I think where a lot of coaches go wrong with this is that they are truly just pestering the client. Just like, hey, just so you know, it's check-in day. Haven't heard from you in a couple weeks. Just wanted to see what's going on. What is this? And that's not enough for them if they're in this, whatever is going on internally with them that's keeping them from reaching out to you. That's probably not creating an any safer space for them to reach out to you. So instead, like, reminding them of the importance, the utility, the value behind the communication. Like, hey, I don't want to make assumptions of what's going on in your life. I'm not going to like pretend that I know why you're not checking in. Would love to hear from you why, but ultimately want you to know that in order for me to best help you, I need to know what's going on and I want to know what's going on. And if it's nothing good, great. We can work through the nothing good together, right? So like really sharing that with them and giving them that safety and security. Something else I like to do too is just like little tiny, now we're talking like tips, tricks, hacks type of thing. But I would do this a
Those are
lot with
always
my
good.
clients. Yes, I know they're always good. People are like, "Oh yes, give me one of those." I don't need all the mindset stuff. Just tell me like the one little thing I need to do. But what can be really helpful is to lower the barrier of entry in some capacity. And one way you can do that is reach out to this person, especially if it's someone that you're really having a hard time getting in contact with, and simply saying, "Hey, I know we haven't chatted in a few weeks. I'm still your coach. I'm still your biggest fan, your biggest supporter. I have some ideas for you. Do you have 10 minutes to get on a quick call
I
with me?"
love that. A quick sync. Yeah.
That's it. Just, I have some ideas for you. Do you have 10 minutes? And also, with so many of us working in the online space, and you're not necessarily, maybe calls aren't ever part of your coaching program, which is entirely possible, that is a really great place to just like get them on and have them like basically in the room with you in some regard, to ask them questions. And then they do feel like they have to give back in that moment. I mean, what are they going to do? Just stay silent on the other side of the phone? And when you're hooking them in with this, like, I have ideas for you, like, I do want you to come with like some thoughts and some ideas and some things. But the reality is, we're just trying to get them on the phone so you can have a conversation and see where it goes. So I really like that. And just kind of like opening the door, lowering the barrier of entry. I don't need you to fill out the normal check-in form and do all of your stuff. Let's just get on a 10-minute call.
Yeah. Meeting them where they're at, and, um, recognizing where they are even in like their sympathetic, are they in their sympathetic nervous system? Do they have a lot going on? Is it an illness thing or an injury thing? Like there's so many doors that you could open. And it's tough. It's tough when somebody's not communicating. But I always find, I was saying to my husband, there's a difference if somebody is, and maybe you use different language. I can just be candid, right? Like if somebody has become the relationship, let's say the relationship has become toxic, right? And the coach is not, and coaches work for us, right? So if you're not feeling like you're like the coach is feeling like they're getting negative and down and whatever, like that could be the possible flag that the relationship has become toxic on some level, right? But if the client is showing up and they're signing up for the programming, in my opinion, my experience has been they're there for a reason. And sometimes you as the coach, you're a lifeline. And I do feel I've been coaching since 2000 and, oh my God, I'm dating myself, since 2012. And then I taught yoga before that. The clients that are going through the most challenges are the ones that have taught me the most about coaching. And again, I often refer to my mom. I was so invested in her success. I mean, I was worried about her health. I was worried I was going to lose her if she didn't get in shape. And it was like, we're going to find a way. We're going to find a way. And we had that tech thing to go around. Like she was just struggling and in tears sometimes, couldn't remember her password. And everything is so techie the way I coach. So it's like, how do I meet that person in the middle? And if you see them getting super anxious about something, it's like, all right, like I remember I asked her, like, Mom, you're eating a cookie, like you're not eating that much food. She didn't have an appetite. She was barely eating over 1,000 calories at almost 98 pounds when she started. And she was kind of a smartass. She said, well, but this cookie is in your recipe cookbook. It's a chewy, so I figured it was healthy. It had a little protein powder in it. I'm like, you know what? She's smart enough. She knows it's in that cookbook. She said it had protein in it. I'm like, I'm going to give her the win. So you've got to have that nuance too. And that develops with working with clients that require you to start thinking outside of the box, right? Like this is the direction I thought it would. Where do I go next? Where do I navigate? Can you tell me more about, clients that you've been working with for a long time that start to falter? Because that can happen, like recommitting after 3 years or 4 years, and you're not pursuing a goal, like a bodybuilding goal or like a wedding or something. And so I can start to see people drifting a little bit. what do you have to say about, for coaches, about, again, pattern recognition there and what to do to make sure you're not becoming that jail keeper or, that wet blanket, and getting them back into their journey? And maybe it's a different point.
Right. And I think that's the thing, right? It's a different journey now. It's something else. And it's an interesting conversation because I think to some degree we don't always want like a carrot and stick situation, right? That's ultimately long-term health and fitness behaviors. It's not and really shouldn't always be like, okay, the carrot is weight loss, the carrot is stepping on stage, the carrot is I'm trying to run a marathon. Like we're always seeking something to keep us doing these health behaviors. We want to ultimately just get to the point where we are just doing it without having like a very specific goal that we're working towards. So if you're working with someone for years, and yeah, when they first came to you, it was like, yo, I got all of this stuff that needs to be worked on. I'm not eating healthy. I'm not sleeping well. I'm not
Very
going
easy
for
to see.
walks. Yeah, right. And so then you're kind of like chipping away, and it's like
You're getting
very
big
easy.
wins, right? You're getting those
Yes,
big
big
wins.
wins right away.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So then what happens when you get to the point where like, okay, I've chipped away at all of that stuff and I've had all of those big wins and I got to this point where I've lost weight. I feel better. So much of this is just part of my lifestyle. There are, I think this is where almost kind of like personality types come into play here too, because there are people who are like, I'm a competitor and I want to be able to like feel like I'm working towards something. And there's something for me to like, we're coming back to the importance and the utility, and there's a reason for why I'm doing what I'm doing. They really need that, whereas other people don't as much. So this is where, just like we've been saying this entire time, it's so important to meet your people where they're at and understand who that person is. And this is it kind of all just comes down to like having a conversation with them. And maybe if you're noticing, like you were saying, they're kind of slipping away and they're not doing things as consistently anymore, like finding as much interest, or maybe even just like talking to you as much as they did before. Like, are we in a situation where this person is just kind of good where they're at and they're being consistent with stuff and they're feeling good about it? Or are we in a situation where this person is like feeling lackluster and they're not as interested anymore? And we might be losing some of like the really great part of motivation, like intrinsic motivation, the internal drive to do something. Then we need to pay attention to that. But again, we don't want to make assumptions as coaches. Like this is where having a conversation with that person, like, hey, I could be totally off base here and just making shit up, but I've kind of started to notice, like we've been working together for years. I've noticed some differences, some patterns are popping up. You can tell me if I'm crazy, but if you see this too, I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. Like literally just leave it at that. And that person will come to you and say, I've just been really stressed lately, or there's just been a lot of stuff, or I haven't been falling in love with this as much as I used to. I don't really know what's going on. Or like, yeah, I really feel like I need a goal. I feel like I need something to work. There are so many different responses to that. And if you just leave it open-ended and you have a good relationship with this person, which you should if you've been working with them for a long time, let them come to you with that. And it's so much of like what I'm telling coaches all of the time is like, how can we like sit on our hands and let the client bring the information to us rather than us making assumptions, which can be really hard to do if it's someone you've been working with for a long time and or you've just been coaching for a really long time. Like you do start to see a lot of the same struggles and a lot of the same situations. So we want to just be like, I know what this is. The reality is you don't. And ultimately, the client is the expert on their lives. You're not the expert on their lives. You may be the expert on nutrition and exercise and all of this stuff, but ultimately not on them. So we have to kind of like
That's a
stay almost
great
like in
distinction.
researcher mode. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, that brings me to this other idea that I know floats around in your world, that it's not knowledge, and I love this. It's not knowledge that changes behavior; it's mindset. And then again, like as a coach, you've got to learn to recognize that and help cultivate in your client that growth around cultivating more resilience and more resourcefulness. That's what I like to be. I want you guys to all become the most resourceful and resilient woman in the room, right?
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit of that? What do you mean by that? And where have you seen
Yeah.
that go down? Like trying to educate, and the knowledge, the science behind everything, but it's really the mindset shift that has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we think about it this way, if you went out on the street and you asked people like what's holding them back from their health and fitness goals, or what are they doing for their health and fitness behaviors? I mean, none of those people are going to say, oh, I just don't know what healthy food items are. And they're not going no one's going to say, oh, exercise, that's something I'm supposed to be doing. They're all going to come back at you with like, oh, I suck at self-control, or like I self-sabotage all of the time, or I'm on it for like 3 weeks and then I'm off it for like 3 to 6 weeks, right? So it's really easy to see, like, if we just zoom out, that knowledge isn't really the problem. And actually, this is kind of like what got me into my PhD work in general, is trying to better understand why we have all of these people who know they need to exercise and eat healthy, but struggle so much to do it. And they are likely also very aware of the benefits that come from exercise and eating healthy beyond even just body composition. Like, let's talk like longer life. Like, your day-to-day life is better. It feels better. You have more energy. They know those things. So it's really not a knowledge issue. And so many coaches do get stuck in that trap of like, oh, I just need to teach more about macros, or I just need to teach more about progressive overload. And like, that's not what's going to help your clients stick to the plan, nor is it going to help you attract more clients either. It's helpful for people to see that you know things. Yes, we want you to be a credible source, a trustworthy source of information. Otherwise, right, people aren't going to hire you just because you're helping them. You're talking about, oh, like, let me talk about your mindset and all these things. Like, they need to know that you actually know nutrition and fitness as well, of course. But that is really such a smaller dial when we're talking about behavior change. And people know that too. So being able to have those more frank conversations of, hey, you already know you need to exercise and eat healthy. That's not the problem. So what do you think is actually holding you back? And then if you're able to actually speak to the self-sabotaging behaviors, the self-limiting beliefs, the fixed mindset, all of that, you also just like set yourself apart from so many other coaches, most other coaches who are just saying, here's some macros, here's a workout plan, see you next week, right?
Yeah, the mindset thing has always been foundational to me. And, I started off using a book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
Good one.
I love him. He's just so accessible for everyone. It's easy to go through, and it just anchors the community and shared language, which is huge, right? Oh, your upper limit problem, or like, oh, I'm spiraling upwards, or I'm like, upper limiting myself. I love Chopwood Carry Water. I don't know if you're familiar with Joshua Medcalf. He does some, it's such a great book. You got to check that one out. It's so good. It's a bunch of little stories, little aphorisms. And then he has another book called Pound the Stone. It's great for athletes too, like falling in love with the process of becoming great. So key if you want to be, doing this forever and doing this with awareness, right? Not just ticking off boxes because you're supposed to tick off boxes. You start to fall in love and understand the why behind it and the bigger picture, that everything you do, whether it's pursuing a transformation journey or getting financial coaching so you can be financially successful, whatever it is, you're crafting who you will become, and not for the external aspect of it, although that often happens. But when you're on your deathbed, all you're left with is thoughts in your mind. And who are you, right? What can you say about yourself? Did you show up for your growth, for other people? Did you live a life of value? Did you have purpose? Like, those are core questions. And it will, that happens to us sooner than we think. I know, older people, my mom included, are they're just surprised. They're surprised that they're 79. They're like, how did I get here? Right. And they still think that they're that 30 or 25-year-old version of themselves. And it's important to live a life like that. And when we're coaching, I think we can be incredibly powerful conduits, because in order to transform the body, and I know you do other kinds of coaching, but in order to transform the body, you have to, for the long haul, you have to transform your mind. And that involves self-awareness. Do you talk about that a lot with how you help coaches that are new to this piece of coaching, to help clients get over friction or resistance? Like, how do you get in there? How do you wedge that in? And do you give your coaches like tools? Like I said, I use this book and I teach my coaches, like, we use this book, we ask these questions. What do you do?
Yeah. Tools, yes, absolutely. Like I'm immediately, as you said that, I was like, which tools and strategies are, I'm like running through, okay, what is the HMCC structure and like what we go through. But I mean, it's from habit formation to the battle between stress and self-control in our minds and like
Mhm.
understanding that with clients. We talk about motivation and the different types of motivation that exist and how it's not always about wanting more motivation, because if we have more motivation from the wrong sources, that's not necessarily
Yeah.
helpful for long-term behavior change either. Obviously, growth versus fixed mindset and being able to pick up on whether or not your clients are showcasing more of a fixed mindset. Like, how do we notice that even just in their language? And then where do we go from there with them too? So a lot of it is kind of like,
I love
I,
this.
I honestly didn't really I still don't really love just like the term mindset coach, because it seems synonymous to like how you would nutrition coach or be a strength coach. And you're just like providing protocols and that person is following them. But when it comes to real mindset coaching, it's not as direct and it's more about the questions that you're asking. I know you're familiar with motivational interviewing and like how you're actually presenting information. It's more about how you're saying, even rather than what you're saying. So all of these tools, yes,
I
are
think you always
important.
interview people. My
Exactly.
goal is supposed to be as honest and abrasive as possible. So like they know, like it's not sunshine and like we're you coming into like we're getting stuff done here.
Yes, yes, I love that. That's so good. And like it's expectation setting again, actually. Yes. But yeah, it's so much of like the between the lines coaching. And when I was like very much involved in the one-on-one health and fitness coaching space, like I said, now I've kind of gone out of that direction and now I just coach coaches rather. And it was always clients asking, especially like on sales calls and stuff, okay, so you do the mindset stuff. Like how do you do mindset coaching? I'm like, I could sit here and tell you, like, oh, we're going to give you this exercise, and then you're going to get this worksheet, and then you're going to fill out this form. But that's not really how this works. The reality is, it's embedded into the fabric of what we do as coaches
Mhm.
at this company, right? It's the questions that you're being asked. Is you're going to start to have realizations and start to think differently about things, and that is the mindset coaching that we do, right? So it is tools, and there are specific things that like I said, motivational interviewing or implementation intentions, if then planning, like there's a lot of like specific strategies embedded into these things. But yeah,
I'm gonna tease us out a little bit because I'm sure people are going, "What the heck is
yeah,
motivational?"
of course.
Can
Yeah.
you talk about? You said that, and you said implementation planning.
And yes, you can actually call it that, but if then planning is kind of like the
Okay, then
more
planning.
like layperson term. Yeah, yeah. And it's all based
Okay.
on the science of implementation intention. So yeah, we can talk a little bit about both of those things. So yeah, motivational interviewing. When I when I first heard this term, I was like, oh, is this for like interviewing people for jobs?
Good
That's
job.
motivational interview. That's got to be what it is, right? And no, it's definitely not. It actually was first established more in like the substance abuse addiction space to help people get over ambivalence and get to a point where they are starting to heal and get into recovery from those things. And has since then really is a communication method at the end of the day. Since then has now been expanded out into a lot of different areas, including health coaching. So it really is a framework that you can use to ask better questions, reflect back what people are saying to you, give them more autonomy and the power to like drive decision making, which ultimately, as much as people are saying, I just want to be told what to do, that's not the best strategy when it comes to behavior change. They need to actually come to conclusions and solutions on their own. So really good coaching is knowing how to ask questions and guide the conversation in a way that that happens rather than you just like serving them solutions on a silver platter. So motivational interviewing could really help with that. Really, really
That
well
sounds huge.
validated.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So powerful. So powerful. And we actually kind of like mentioned a little aspect of this too. I said like coaches need to learn to like sit on their hands. One aspect of motivational interviewing is the idea of the writing reflex. So this is something that we do as coaches. And honestly, we do this like probably friends, family members, coworkers, team members, where they come to you and they're struggling with something or telling you that something is going on. They're trying to make a decision, whatever it is. And you just like jump to solution mode
Yeah.
and fix it mode. And that is the writing reflex. And with coaches, it's extra hard because we're in a helping profession and someone hired us to help them and give them solutions, right? So if someone is struggling, we just want to be like, oh, you can't hit your protein intake. Here's a PDF for high protein recipes, right? But that's not great for behavior change. We need to get to the point where you're sitting on your hands, you're kind of like calming down that writing reflex, and instead asking a question like, what? But looking back in your previous weeks, and there's been a couple weeks where you hit your protein flawlessly. Can you tell me a little bit more about what happened during that week rather than just jumping to a solution and making assumptions for what that client needs?
Boy, I feel I'm guilty here.
Yeah, you're like, wait, about that protein PDF.
Yeah, my clients are listening. Don't listen to it for your answer for years.
That's so funny. So yeah, really, really good tool, really powerful because again, it's just like, it's so autonomy supportive. And that's one of the 3 basic psychological needs. It's autonomy, belongingness, and competence. So if we want to feel motivated and stay motivated, we need to get these needs met. And we're also motivated to meet those needs. And autonomy is so important in just trying to allow your clients to be in the driver's seat as much as possible.
I think it's, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Because we have clients that are in different seasons, and even in one like in one year, you could be in different seasons, right? I work with mostly 40 plus, a lot of and even 50-year-olds. I'd say it almost half now, half 40s and half 50s. Got a couple of 30-year-olds running around, but generally, and these gals, I mean, they are killers. Like in their careers, they are killers, I got to say. And they have kids. Maybe their kids are in college. They've taken care of ailing parents. Their hands are very, very full. And, you've got to, again, seeing who's in front of you, meeting them in the middle and understanding, like, is this person struggling now because of their allostatic load, right? And do I need help create space? Is it a time for me to ask questions? Do they have decision fatigue? Is it a time for me to, I see you're nodding your head, so you know where I'm going with this, right? Like coach that maybe is a younger coach or a coach that needs to pivot and like, okay, you got to start learning this mindset stuff, right? How do you draw the coach in that this is important? Yes, there are times when you do have to go and just give a solution, right? Or just say, listen, I'm going to pull back on you. I see that you're missing your training. I know you're traveling, you're busy, you got health issues. I'm going to pull you back into training, right? And then we're going to sit down and collaborate. Tell me your angle, how you coach this.
Yeah, no, Michelle, I really like that to say like, hey, this is what I'm thinking for this week because what I'm feeling from you, especially if you really know this client well, there's so many varying levels of all of this. And you could say, hey, no big deal. Let's pull this back. Next week, we're going to have like a really solid conversation about this. Here's a couple questions, just things I want you to think about. You don't even need to get back to me. Just like while you're driving in your car, making your way to the airport, whatever you're doing this week, just like kind of mull over that stuff and we'll touch base next week. And if that's not like, does that sound good? Let me know. If not, we can obviously chat more options. So I think to your point, yeah, there's absolutely a time and a place where you should still be providing solutions. And I don't want anyone who's listening to this to think that like, oh, so I always have to just like ask a question instead of give some advice. Like that's not necessarily the case. And especially too, when you have like more advanced clients too, who know what they're doing, it may actually be to the point where you are just adjusting macros and helping them with their training and figuring out different like movement patterns they need to add in and things that they want to try. That's an entirely different situation than the person who's really struggling with consistency and can't stick to the plan and starts to not check in with you and things like that. So definitely there's never like a black and white situation here,
People, we're humans and we like to have the like red and blue pill. It's like, no. There's a spectrum. There's nuance. There's time and place. It's learning how to recognize what do I got in front of me. There's tone of voice. Some people respond. Sometimes I'm so surprised at the response I get when I'm like, all right, we're doing the like tough love here. And I'm like, that's it. I'm going to lose that client. They get, thanks, coach. I needed to hear that. And I'm like, wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's like your version of like auto regulation for coaching, right? It's like you can kind of, and you doing this for
Yeah.
so long too, are really good at likely picking up like, oh, I feel like I can tell where I need to go with this conversation with this client versus like someone else who might be newer, or you're just starting with a client. So you haven't developed that relationship yet to even like do something like that. But like to your point though, yeah, there's definitely varying levels of this because it could even look like somewhere in the middle where you could say, hey, I don't necessarily know every detail about your situation and I don't want to pretend to. I have worked with a lot of clients who have been in a similar situation as you. These are some things that I've done with them or some options we could try that have worked for clients in the past. What do you think about that? Which one seems like the best option for you? So you are like, you're not giving them like per like the decision fatigue conversation. You're not just like putting the responsibility fully on them, but you're kind of like streamlining the process still, but you're still allowing them to be part of the conversation still. And they feel like they chose what they wanted to do. And people are so much more likely to stick to things when it feels like it was their decision, their idea, the thing that they want to do.
Yeah, and then in terms of empower, like I know you talk about this, but you ideally want to empower your clients so that they will be able to go on their merry way, rocking it on their own. Like they don't need that coaching. You can have it if like you have the finances, great, but I would never want anyone to feel that they needed to work with me. Like I after a year or even 2 years, you know this stuff. You're a queen at macros. You know how to auto regulate. You know the importance of HRV if you're a tech girl, like you know this stuff, right? Do you ever see coaches going too far with the mindset? Like they're like, okay, yeah, I haven't been doing any of this mindset. And then they're just inundating their client with too many questions. Do you see that? And they have to kind of autocorrect them a little bit, pull back like, hey, it's not working. Now they're ghosting even worse. They're not, they didn't renew.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point because that, especially when we have students who leave my certification and they're like so amped to use all of this stuff, and they keep hearing me say like, "Sit on your hands, ask questions, don't jump to anything," that sort of thing. And then we have them do a client case study, like a mock client check-in as their final assessment as they're exiting the certification, and we just like, oh, there are 50 questions in this like mock client check-in response. And we don't necessarily want to do that either. Like, I know I'm saying ask more questions, but at the same time, we need to be very cautious with the overwhelm that we might be putting on to our clients then too. And also, if you start using some of these different strategies and coaching methods and you weren't before, that can be like a really fast like left turn for your clients who weren't used to that, and they were used to you just saying like, yeah, sure, here's your updates for the week, like see you next week, that's it. And now you're like, so want to ask you some of these deeper, more interesting questions. Then they're like, where did this come from? And like, why are we doing this? Yes, exactly. So first and foremost, yes, be cautious with how many questions you're asking. And because then you're just not going to get responses either. If you're asking 50 questions in a client voice memo and it's 5 minutes long, you will get maybe a response to one, and they're going to assume the rest is like rhetorical. You need to be really careful with the questions that you're asking and which ones you actually do want responses to, which ones you could just want them to think about, that sort of thing, and to not overwhelm them for sure, because it will absolutely have the opposite effect.
Yeah, especially if the reason why the client is ghosting or they're skipping stuff is because, like I said, their allostatic load is super high, and you're just like it's making it it's like work now. It's like, oh my God, I just want coach. I don't want to have these decisions. I want to have a safe space. Let's talk a little bit about perfectionism in coaches, right? Like what do you see in coaches themselves that might be sabotaging their ability to lead?
Yeah, I think
somebody who mentors coaches, I'm like, come on, like you're in your way here.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that a lot. And I work with people obviously on their coaching skills. And then I also do some business mentorship as well. And that's when I hear like, where are you self-sabotaging your ability to lead? I kind of think about like my business coaching clients too. And I mean, so much of the same stuff that I'm teaching them how to support their clients could very well be applied to themselves. That's actually one of my favorite pieces of feedback that we get from the certification is like, I came here to help my clients and I left like realizing how much I need to work on my own mindset and how important your own mindset is as a coach if you want to help your clients with their mindset. Like we say the same thing all the time.
You got my buy-in.
Right, exactly. And we talk about this all the time from a nutrition and fitness perspective. Like if you don't know how to manage your own nutrition and manage your own training, you have no business helping other people do that.
When you're busy, when your kids are X, Y, and Z, when your dog is X, Y, and Z, and I see sometimes coaches like, oh, I got busy. I'm like, yeah, how can you got to lead from the front, right? Like you have to know all the and not just the tools, but I agree with you, Kasey. Like you have to almost from a heart posture, you got to understand. If you're on a pedestal, how are you going to get that buy-in? But if you've been there and you can talk about it, and only if you've been through it, like I've been there, like yesterday, 2,700 steps. I was working from 5 a.m. till 6:30. And I said, Jay, I got to do some cardio. He was like, we can't, it's too late. I'm like, I want it. Heart pumping, and I need to feel that. I just crushed work, right? 2,700 steps. This is for me. But when you go through it, then you can talk to your client. They feel it. They feel the realness. You're not faking this stuff. You were there. And then what did you do? And that's the mindset. Like I did cardio now because I had to. I'm so identified with the feeling, the heart pumping. I know the benefits, but I just feel so good. And that's where you've got to get as a client. You've got to understand that pleasure, the why behind the good habit, right? You're not doing you have to. It's you got to want it. And you got to coach yourself to want it.
Yeah. It's like an interesting sort of dichotomy because coaches understand I need to know nutrition and exercise if I'm going to coach nutrition and exercise. But then when it comes to, mindset, behavior change type of coaching skills, I mean, anybody and everyone who's a fitness coach these days is slapping I do mindset coaching in their Instagram bios, right? But did you get any formal, and this is my own kind of like beef, right? Did you get any formal education or training in the science of mindset and behavior change and and motivational interviewing and all of this stuff? Like, how is it that we are so convicted that go get a nutrition certification if you need to coach nutrition. But when it comes to mindset and behavior change and helping people with their habits and motivation, it's not the same thing. Like people aren't seeing it as like, oh, I need to go learn these things. So and there's so much to it. And I think with mindset, especially, it's just like, it becomes this sort of like woo-woo manifestation type of mindset stuff. The reality is like, I got my Ph.D. for the mindset lab. Like there's science behind this. And then you can leverage that science and use it in your coaching, just like you can with your nutrition certifications.
Yeah. And I think, one of the reasons I got into coaching, I always say I've been a feminist since I was 12. I was reading Gloria Steinem. I don't know if you know who that is.
Amazing. Yes.
I was an odd kid. And I got my knickers in knots going to this gym, and I was getting ready for my first show, and I'm like, all these women, it was an expensive gym, Sports Club LA, they are paying a ton of money. And they're not getting trained. You could see their trainers were on their phone, and it was like a relationship. They were chit-chatting, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. And they're paying like $150 an hour for these things. And then as I got deeper into it, I would go to the Olympia, I would work the booth, and I was like, women are getting so underserved here. And especially, and I was already in my 40s at that time, my early 40s, I said, especially the older gal, totally getting ignored and treated like she couldn't be an athlete. And I've been an athlete entire life, and said, I'm going to coach, and I'm going to coach women how I would want to be coached, right? Because women deserve better. And I think of that with mindset coaching, right? And, if people are, sometimes we think, oh, I've had a transformation, I can coach people, right? And maybe you can, especially if you got an instinct for it, an aptitude for it, and you do some learning, and it's continuous learning. I love learning. It's always, the more you learn, the more you can give. So you have that growth attitude. But and a lot of times I think this is the case, and I'm sure you've seen that, you're getting into it because you lost some weight. You think you can make some easy change. And you're like, I'm a girl, I could do it, right? you're really doing other women a disservice, and for some women, you might be their last chance at doing a transformation. And if you haven't cultivated your skills, whether it's through the psychology of coaching, the how to do hypertrophy training, proper programs, periodization if that's your jam, nutrition, and all of that, you're really doing these women a disservice. And then you can top off on it. Oh, well, if she's ghosting me, or she's not performing, she's not progressing, she's got eating. That is just toxic coaching culture, right?
100%. And that's like so unfortunate that that's also kind of I guess it's like a stereotype of call it like the Instagram coach. I actually heard this recently that I had a like
Wellness
for my
coaching,
business
right?
mentor.
Wellness coaching.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I had
Exactly.
the business mentorship retreat recently, and one of the gals in my group was mentioning how she had a client call with someone who was like, yeah, I used to have an Instagram coach, and she like did me dirty, right? Like did all these things wrong, and it was so blah blah blah. And now these people, yes, it hurts the coaching industry, because then those people are fearful, as they should be, to hire another coach, because they're worried they're going to have another experience like that. So it is really unfortunate. Like, hey, if you want to become a coach, I love that for you. Like, please do it. Please follow that passion, especially if you saw a transformation yourself. Like, that's where most
Yeah.
coaches start. They saw it for themselves, and so they're like, wow, I want to help more people do this. But just please do it in an ethical way.
Yeah, and invest in your learning, and it's if you can coach yourself, it's rarely a client issue or somebody is uncoachable.
Mhm.
It's a skill acquisition, and lessons show up in myriad ways. And look at that. And I think a lot of seasoned coach will tell you, like, they learned their most from the client that was struggling to progress, that was struggling to manage their schedule, the boundary issues, like, oh my God, say no,
Yep.
right? And you
Yeah.
learn your skill set. You learn how to be present. I'm going to ask one more question. I know we went way over time, but I just ask one more question. For women who feel stuck, and a lot of the gals listening, they're going to be in their 40s and 50s. For gals that are feeling really stuck, what would be the first mindset shift that you feel they have to make, or do you have one? Like, you got to start here.
Yeah. Oh, especially for women in that age group. And you can probably speak to them because you're working with them all the time, more than I am. But my thought process immediately is like, you're not broken. There's
Oh my
nothing
God,
wrong with
thank
you.
you.
Oh,
Oh,
oh
you're
my
not
gosh.
broken.
You're not
Especially
broken.
in the industry right now, it's like, oh my God, if you're
Yes.
and you're 40, forget it. You got to start injecting yourself and popping
Oh my
pills
God.
and hooking yourself up to
Terrible.
tubes, get your IV drip. It's like, what the heck?
I
Do
know.
you
I know.
see
So much predatory marketing for women of
it is
that age group. Yeah.
predatory. All right, sorry,
Mhm.
I digress. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What
So
not
yeah,
broken?
you're not broken. And I think like on the same hand too, like what I would encourage anyone listening who might be in this position, may be feeling that way, to also remind yourself that like, yeah, you're 45, you're 55, you're not 25 anymore. And I think so many women who are in that age group are thinking, gosh, well, when I was 25, I was able to do X, Y, Z, and I could go to the gym 2 times per day and I could
Maybe,
do all these things. It's like
maybe.
you're also like you're an entirely different person, and you live an entirely different life than you did when you were in college or whatever. So I think you're often too tough on yourself to think like, well, I used to be able to, I could do this, and I was doing that, and like I could, snap my fingers and lose 30 pounds if I wanted to, and like live off of bananas and tequila and like all this stuff. But that's like not who you are anymore. But there's nothing wrong with that. Again, you're not broken, but you're living a different life. You're a different person, and it's beautiful. Let's work with that rather than trying to like move against it and try to find your 25-year-old self. Like, you don't want to go back there. Do you don't want to do that anymore. You don't want to be that person anymore.
Mhm.
You've become this amazing person. Like, let's leverage that and be
Yeah,
proud and excited for where you are now. And you're not broken. You're just you now.
yeah, yeah. And I think it was I was interviewing Tony Butagier. He was interviewing me, and we were talking about that same thing. And I also, when I coach girls, when I do intakes, I'm like, maybe you were doing that, but I'm going to be honest with you. When I go to the gym, I don't see 20-year-olds lifting correctly, eating correctly. I don't. So chances are you're thinking that you used to do this, you're thinking that, but you weren't. And which is exciting because we've got a lot of money on the table. But I was talking to, I'm pretty sure it was Tony, and and I agree with him, when you're younger, you do have, I call it more, the guardrails are really spread apart. Like they're wide. There's a lot of play space. What did he say exactly? Like you don't have to be as precise with your protocols, with your systems, with your protocols, with your routines, your habits. You don't have to be as precise. But as you get older, you do have to start to dial it in. And I like to think of it as more like know your blueprint, really know your body, right? Dial it in, and which is more empowering than having to be more restrictive or I can't do this as much. It's an empowering way to think about it. It's like, yeah, you were sloppy when you were 20.
Yeah.
Right? Now you can't be so sloppy. Now by 40, your body expects, hey, I'm giving you all the signs and signals. Do you know me? Treat me right. And think of it like that. And then do the right thing by your body.
Right. And I think that's also just like, your entire life was that way. At 20, you didn't know what you wanted to do with your life, and you were so lost in so many ways, and like all of these things. You don't want to go back there. And like to your point too, I think that is so true. You think like, oh, that was like the golden era where I could do all these things and everything worked so easily for me. But also, are you just reflecting on it and like focusing on all the good and not necessarily all of the things that weren't going as well and where your life was and all of that stuff too? It's like what hindsight is much different than what was probably reality at that time.
Yeah. And you got to let go of that frame that the now is negative, right? It's like now, first time to plant a tree, best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is now. And look at today. The moment you have the aha moment or that self-awareness, I got to make a change and I can make a change. It's golden. You're there, right?
That's all you need.
Own it. It's all you need. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the show. We dropped a lot. I think that we covered the most questions that I have wanted to ask on an interview. Usually I'm lucky to get just one out of the box. Thank you, Kasey. And guys, I'm going to share everything you need to know about how to engage with Kasey in the show notes. If you are a coach and you're listening to this, please sign up with her certifications, and you can follow a lot of great information that she drops on the gram. Thank you, guys, and have a wonderful week.